So the last time we met, when we talked about the TX Plus, we went over how to do an initial TX Plus and how to do a, hang on, I got you all are sort of in my way here. I'm gonna close you all up. There we go. Sorry about that. So we talked about the initial TX Plus and we talked about the annual TX Plus. And today we're going to talk about what to do when you discharge somebody, and then what to do when you open up a service and you don't see the Add TX Plus link. You know, there's so many times you go in, you open that service and it's just not there. So how can we get around that? And the good news is we can get around that right within the service itself. Don't have to look too far to get around it. But before we dive into those two areas, I just want to review those really important things to remember about the TX Plus. So first and foremost, the date of the service must be on or after the start date in the header of your TX Plus and in each PGOI in the TX Plus. We said that a lot the last time. We're going to say it a lot again this time because that is the most important thing. If this date of the service, and it actually also has to be scheduled on, and the date of the service on your calendar must be on or after the start date in the header and each PGOI. If that does not happen, your TX Plus will not pull into your service. That is usually the number one problem that we see when we're troubleshooting the TX Plus. Before completing this service, be sure that your TX Plus has pulled into it. Don't sign and submit it if the service hasn't pulled, if the TX Plus hasn't pulled into the service. And if you don't see the TX Plus down on the left side of the nav bar in that tree formation. If you don't see that, don't sign and submit it. You can use the Save Billing Info button to capture the signatures that day. Just don't click the sign and submit button and then contact the credible team. There are many occasions we can help you get the service to pull in, or the TX Plus to pull in. But once you sign and submit it, if the TX Plus isn't in the service, we can't pull it in. So make sure you contact us before you sign and submit it if it's not pulling in. There are occasions we cannot fix it, but there are many times that we can. Before you start that annual plan, remember that you need end dates in the current TX Plus in the header in each PGOI. And those end dates need to be on a date that's before the start date of the new TX Plus that you're starting. So that's usually what we do for most ISPs, right? One ends on 5/11 and the other one begins on 5/12. And at discharge, remember to end date the TX Plus in the header in each PGOI. And we're going to talk about that today. Any questions so far? Good. Okay, we're going to keep on moving along then. Okay, let me get through this. Okay, so discharge. The first thing we're talking about is the discharge. So when you go to discharge a client from services, we want to be sure that you're end dating the TX Plus. So we're going to do this, when somebody at the time of discharge, we want to end date the header and all the PGOIs as of the date of the discharge. And we want to do this because it helps prevent those problems and complications if the client comes back at a future date to re-enroll in services. So we might discharge somebody today and they can come back in 3 months and then we're going to re-enroll them. And you're going to go and do a new initial TX Plus on that person for their new episode of care, but you don't have that Add TX Plus link in the service, or you can't seem to pull the TX Plus in. And when we go and look at it, it's because the TX Plus is still sitting there on the nav bar from the last time they were in the services. So we want to be sure that those get end dated. So that way you're not sitting there in front of the client trying to create this new ISP and it's just not working and you're getting all frustrated and the client's getting frustrated right there with you. So make sure at discharge you're end dating the TX Plus. So let's just take a look. It's super simple to do. I'm going to go in here to our training domain, and I have a client called Discharge ISP. I'm going to find this client. So here's my client. We're going to be discharging this client, and I'm going to use today as the discharge date. Let's see. So it's super simple. We just go to the client's profile here, and we click on TX Plus here on the client's nav bar. So this client is an MH outpatient client. I'm doing my discharge today. They've been in services since September. So I had an ISP that went from September 8, 2021 through September 7, 2022. But since we're discharging them today, I want to end date this TX Plus here in case they come back into services later. So super simple. Just click the edit button here. And then we're going to go through and just put in the end date as of today. So I'm going to scroll through here for just a moment. So we have this set of problems, goals, objectives, interventions that are end dated already for 9/7, but we're going to have to change this end date to today. When I scroll down through here, apparently I put in a problem, goal, objective, and intervention that didn't have any end date. So I got to make sure I put one as of today in here. And I'm also going to go ahead and click this show expired items button. And we'll see if there's anything that I expired previously. So this is where I like to call this zebra stripe gum, because it looks just like the zebra stripe gum. I don't think that's what it was actually called, but I used to eat it in the 80s, when I was a kid. But you see, these are problems, goals, objectives, and interventions that apparently we end dated back in January. These were ones that perhaps the client no longer needed. They maybe met the outcomes here, or they were just, it was something that at the time we decided we just no longer needed them. So I already end dated them. And I'm going to leave these end dates as January because these are before today's date, and this is going to be okay. It'll wrap up the whole ISP quite nicely. So we leave these the way they are. We just need to be sure everything is end dated for today or before. I think we talked a little bit about this last month. So you can change this date here to today's date. And then when we'll go down here to start on and end dating the problems, goals, objectives, and interventions, let's see, we get this error that says the children end date cannot be older than the parent end date. What that means is this goal here is a child, and it's 9/7/22. So it's a later date than the problem, which is the parent. The problem has to have a later date than the goal, the objective, the intervention. The goal has to have a later date than the objective, the intervention. So when this happens, we just say, okay. And the easy way to get around it is work from the bottom up. So go all the way to the bottom. So we're going to leave these ones here, so we're not going to touch them. But I'm going to go down to this one and change this date here to 05/11/2022. And it lets me do that. So I can work upwards in this case. If you like to type them in like I'm doing, we can do that. Or if you prefer to use a date picker, the calendar, you can do that too. Now for this problem, goal, objective, intervention, I still need to put in end dates. There are no end dates in here. So in this case, I can go ahead and select today's date. Yep. Once I do that, you notice it filters through the goals, objectives, and interventions here. And these ones we're going to leave as is. So this has all been end dated. I click save. It says I'm going to expire it. Yes, that's exactly what I want to happen. And I say, okay. So it's still here. I can still see it here because it's going to end at midnight tonight. At midnight tonight, it's going to be in the closed section. So if I needed to look at it again, I would, after today, I would need to look at the view closed. So, but it'll show up there tomorrow. Any questions so far? Super simple.
No questions in the chat.
Okay. And we're gonna keep on trucking. So I know you've all been there. You go and you're going to start an ISP. It might be a new client that this happens to you, or it might be an existing client. You go and you start your ISP service. You open up the service and you're expecting to see the add TX Plus link over on the left, and it's not there. So what that means when that happens is if it's a new client, or you're thinking it's a new client, it might not be a new client. We may have an issue like we were just talking about. There's an active, well, there is an active TX Plus. Whatever the case may be, there is an active TX Plus for this client. So you think it's a new client. What that means is perhaps there's an old ISP out there that wasn't end dated properly. And now the client's coming back into services, so you don't see that add TX Plus link. Or maybe you're going to do an annual review. Maybe you thought you had all the end dates in the TX Plus, but perhaps we didn't. So now I'm sorry, now my cat is behind me, distracting me. So hopefully she'll go away soon. Been getting into all sorts of mischief this morning. But it indicates that there's an active TX Plus. And so we have to somehow manage that active TX Plus so that you can get your new one done. So what we do is while you're right there in the service, you're going to use the client intake link right there in the service to correct the problem. And then you can build your new TX Plus right there within the service as well. You're doing it all at once. You don't ever have to leave the service. You don't have to get out of there, go over to the TX Plus, come back to your schedule. You don't have to do any of that. We can do it all right within the service. So it's a lot faster. So I'm going to go here to my schedule. So I have this client here. I have this Add TX Plus client is what I have. So we're going to be creating a meeting with the client today, and I'm going to be creating a new TX Plus for this client. So we want to be sure that we're scheduling the service on the same day as the start date of the TX Plus. Remember, the service must always be on this day, the same day, or the day or a day after the start date of the TX Plus. So I'm doing this today on 5/11. It is scheduled right here in 5/11. So I'm going to click it open. I'm again working in our outpatient program. It works the same regardless of whether you're MH outpatient, your case management, your ID, SA, MH, it all works the same. I'm going to go ahead and click my begin service button. So when I come in here, the first thing that we're doing is we're creating our initial or annual ISP category. We talked about that at the last session. For those of you who are ID/DD case managers, you're using the ID/DD case management ISP category, and MH and SA programs are using the initial annual ISP category. So usually you're filling that out first. And they're similar, they look similar. ID/DD has DOJ state reporting elements that MH and SA don't have. But you're clicking whether it's an initial or annual 30-day. I'm going to say this is an annual plan. My ISP start date, again, it's today, 5/11. And in most cases, you know, they last a year in most cases. If you aren't sure how long your ISP should be lasting, please talk to your supervisor, because some programs can be a little bit different. In here, we're putting our summary review dates. So for MH and SA programs, we're looking at a 90-day review date to be put in here. Yes, Lucretia. Welcome. You always have good questions, Lucretia.
Well, and I still end up emailing you. Okay.
You got good questions.
Question about the end date. So the end date is an exact 365 days from the start date, or are we counting in 90-day increments, looking at the ISP summary review date?
Yeah, it's going to be 300. It's going to be no more than 365, 366 in a leap year. I know we always forget the leap years. But yes, I always count that extra. But it will be no more than that.
Okay.
So for most MH, SA programs, and for ID case management, it is going to, you're going to be doing it for a year. There might be some programs that are short-term programs, and we really are only wanting to do this for 6 months, and we're discharging, at 6 months. So we would look at that, but that's going to be a program by program. So people should talk to their supervisors about that.
Thank you.
Hey, Mitzi,
Yeah.
can you explain the 5th quarterly? I've heard staff say that they've been told they can do a 5th quarterly.
Yeah, so what happens is for the MH and for the SA folks that are on the 90-day cycle, the rule is that you have to do this every 90 days. And what the rule is that you're meeting with the client on or before the 90th day following the start date for your first review. But when you have that review with the client, it's on the date that you meet with them to review with them. Your next review then starts 90 days from that date. So let's say, instead of waiting 90 days, I'm going to do my review at 80 days because I'm going to go on vacation. Or this is somebody that I have a hard time getting a hold of, so I'm going to make sure I try to do this a little bit early so I don't fall out of compliance. So I've done it on 80 days, and now my next review is 90 days from that date. And if I keep doing them early like that, it's 90 days from each of those dates. So you actually end up doing more reviews because you cannot have a gap. And when you come to the end of the ISP year, you're looking at a gap now, and you need to be sure you've done another review during that gap. Or you have to end date the current ISP early to avoid that 5th review. So we do have some people who do a 5th review. We have some people who actually end date their ISP early and start with a new start date from there. I also recommend to people when they need to make any kind of change on the ISP, to do that, just do a summary review because it has to be signed. So, you're into an ISP for 1 month and, oh, you know what? We need to really redo this. This just isn't going to work at all, or something new came up before the 90 days are over. You need just do a summary review at that point with the client, and then we get it signed. But now you're looking again, I got to do it 90 days from that date. So more reviews end up being put in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So with that in mind, for the MH and SA folks, I usually say just put in the summary 1 review date at 90 days. This is the field that gives you guys a notification in your to-dos. The summary 2, summary 3, summary 4 don't, but the summary 1 does. I say just put the 90 days in here. And for y'all, I recommend skipping the summary 2, summary 3, summary 4, because you're not going to be on that time frame once you start into the ISP year. ID folks, you guys are like clockwork. Every 3 months, go ahead and put your 4 dates in there because yours don't change at all. And if any of you missed it last time, I like to use a date calculator to calculate my 90 days. I just Google date calculator. It's the first one that comes up. I can put in today's date because I'm starting today, but you can put any date you want. And I'm adding 90 days. and I calculate my new date. And so 90 days from today is August 9. So I need to be sure that I do my review prior to August 9. If I go to August 10, I'm out of compliance. So I want to be sure I'm doing it on the 9th or before.
Hey, Betsy.
Yep.
I just wanted to add in, when Ray and I were doing these, she showed me you actually have a date calculator in your calculator on the computer. You don't even have to Google it. If you pull up your regular calculator on your computer.
Walk me through it. Let's see.
Yeah, there it is right there.
Okay, it's right in the middle too.
And if you click those 3 lines, you can change it.
Oh, neat.
Well, look at that. There's another one.
Yes.
Excellent. So you got multiple ways of doing things. Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Hmm, that is neat.
I want to add or subtract days. So from May 11, I'm doing 90 days. Ooh, passed it. There it is. Oh, there you go. Tuesday, August 9th. Thank you. Perfect.
Sure, no problem.
Did not know that. Excellent. Do be sure that your diagnosis is pulling in. If there's nothing here, it means this client does not have the diagnoses. So easy enough to resolve. I click the client intake. Well, actually, first of all, I'm going to save this. I'm going to complete this. And then I'm going to go to client intake. And up here at the top, I'm going to click, it's a stethoscope. But if you hover over these, it shows you what they are. So I'm going to click diagnoses, and I'm going to be sure I put in what the client's diagnosis is. So we're going to say this client has bipolar. So right now you're getting this little pop-up, for any new services that you get that, well, this is actually in the live domain, you are no longer seeing this pop-up. This pop-up's here, but this pop-up is gone in our live domain. What this means is it's giving you an option to save without, to save without ICD-9 means to save as an ICD-10. It's kind of weird language. So we would always have to select save without ICD-9. In the live domain, as of this morning, this pop-up is gone. You can only save ICD-10. So one less thing to worry about now in the live domain. Always be sure you put in who diagnosed it. So it has to be somebody who does have the credentials to make a diagnosis. Whether the onset was prior to admission or not. Always default your diagnoses for your program. That way, when you get to the sign and submit page, it always pulls that defaulted diagnosis in on the sign and submit page, and you don't have to drop down the list and find, some clients have ID, MH, and SA. They're in SA outpatient and ID case management and MH something or another, MH psych. And, you get there, you have to, on the sign and submit page, and then you got to hit the drop down and find your diagnosis. You don't have to do that. It automatically pulls MH for your MH program, or it'll pull SA for your SA program. So always default. Put down in the date of the diagnoses. And then when you get all your stuff filled out, you click save. So now I can come back to my form over here. I was in the initial annual ISP. When I click on that, now it pulls right on it. Let's see, I fixed it all right here. Be sure you enter what assessments you've used. We have Columbia's, we have the CNA, we have the CIA, you have the DLA, ID case management, they have their guides that they use, they have a social assessment. Oh, and y'all have other stuff that you use. People got different programs, have different things. Some, whatever you use, put it in here. Verbal consent was obtained due to COVID-19. I'm saying no here because I'm going to be meeting with this person in person, face to face. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this as a no, and then I can click my complete button. So now I'm ready to build my TX Plus. So I go over here and oh boy, where's the add TX Plus link? It's not here. no, additionally, oh, look at this. I've got goals already pulling in here. How is this happening? I need to be doing a new annual for this person. Or if this is a new person to your services, how is this happening? They're brand new. I should have an add TX Plus and this shouldn't be here if they're brand new. But so we can fix it right from within here. Again, what it means is I've got a TX Plus hanging out there that's not properly ending. So to fix that, I can go to the client intake button again. I'm at the client profile and I'm going to go to this TX Plus link here. It's looks like a set of stairs that are different colors. So I click on it and it's going to pull me right into the form, the TX Plus builder. So here's the culprit here, because I'm an MH outpatient. I have a ISP here that doesn't end until September 2022. So I'm trying to do an ISP for today. So I actually need to edit this and end date this so I can now start my new ISP today. So I click that edit button. I've got 9/14 up here. I've got 9/14 through here. Oh, and look, again, I've got some that don't have a date. And if I click that show expired items, nope, I don't have anything expired. So it's just these two problems or goals. So I need to resolve all this. I need these to end on 5/10. I'm trying to do a new ISP for today. These need to end on 5/10. So I'm going to change this date up here to 5/10. And then I'm going to remember we talked earlier. If I put a 5/10 here in the problems, I'm going to get that error message that the child can't be greater than the parent. So to resolve that, I'm just going to go to the bottom and I'm going to work my way up. Good news is here, none of these have any dates in them, so I can just actually put this one in the problem. Oop. And that'll filter all the way down to the bottom to those. But for this one, I'm going to start here. I'm going to use my date picker this time. And I'm going to change the date to 5/10. And if you prefer, you can type it in directly. Whatever's easiest for you. Let's get the right date down. All right. Once I've got all those dates in here, looks good. I click the save button. I get my message. It's going to expire the TX Plus. I'm like, yes, I needed to do that. So I click OK. Okay, this is okay. This I know, this gives people heartache when they see this, they panic. This means the TX Plus isn't pulling in. And this is when you see something like this, this is when you don't sign and submit. But that's okay right now, because look at this. I have an add TX Plus link here. And I can click that link and now I can go in and build my TX Plus. So in this particular scenario, I'm end dating an ISP. Most likely this is something that a client had come in for services, was discharged. They left, they came back. I'm trying to do a new ISP. But you can also do this for annual ISPs. If you're having your annual ISP meeting, let's say I'm meeting today with someone on 5/11 today, and I have their annual ISP is scheduled to begin on May 20th. So I've scheduled my ISP service on May 20th. I'm opening it up on my schedule on May 20th. But let's say, the ISP, the TX Plus is going to be ending on May 19th, but I didn't properly end date it. So I might have that issue where this add TX Plus link is not there. And I can go ahead and I can fix that and end date everything for May 19th. And then I can still begin my new plan in advance for May 20th. Yes, Lucretia.
So what happens in the case you have a consumer that's receiving individual therapy
Mhm.
from, let's say, Shannon, and then I am doing family therapy, and I'm having to build a an ISP based on family therapy.
And they're both in the same,
They're both in
Program?
MHOP, yes.
you'll have to have one combined ISP. You can only have one TX Plus per program. So you have to have a combined treatment plan where you're, have a combined meeting, treatment team meeting where you're all meeting with the client to build that treatment plan that includes individual, family, group, whatever it needs to include. And let's say you've already started your TX Plus with individual, and during the course of individual treatment, the individual therapist and the client decide, you know what, there's a group here that we want you to go to, and the client agrees to that. We're going to add on some sort of group. Now, we need to change the ISP when things like that happen. So that's where I say, okay, we need to make an update to the ISP. It's before the 90 days. We're going to go ahead and do an ISP review, and we're going to add this new stuff in. Now, also remember, for outpatient folks, you have to do an ISP summary review. Actually, this is for MH outpatient, every 6 sessions or every 90 days, whichever comes first. SA folks, it's every 90 days. SA outpatients every 90 days. Case management is every 90 days. MH and SA case management, I should say, is every 90 days. But MH outpatient still has this 6 sessions or every 90 days, whichever comes first. And your sessions include not just individual, but if they're in individual, they're in family, they're in group, they're all counted towards those 6 sessions. So if you're in MH outpatient and you're getting all 3 of those, or a combination of some sort, those 6 sessions come up a lot sooner than for other people. So you'll be doing a lot more in terms of MH outpatient in those situations. Any other questions so far?
Thank you, Mitzi.
Good questions. So let's go
Mitzi,
ahead.
I do
Go ahead.
have a question, but it's about the ISP summary review dates. Do you want me to wait or ask that now?
No, you can go ahead and ask it now. If depending on the time today, I'm going to try to dig into the summary reviews. If I don't have enough time, we'll do summary reviews for sure at the next session.
Okay.
But let's go ahead and see if we can get your question answered.
Okay. So let's say you are doing the ISP summary review early, or you're doing, and for some reason you have to do it late because you can't find the individual. If you do it, and if you put it on, let's say you did it yesterday and you type it up today and you put it on yesterday's date, what date does it use to calculate the 90 days?
Oh, so the report, yeah. So, so in the case that you do it early, because I think we should actually do them early to stay in compliance, because we do know some people are hard to find, or there's weekends, holidays, vacations, whatever. So I say, let's do them early so we make sure we're in compliance. So when you do them early, the date that you meet with the client to review it. So again, SA and MH, you have to review the summary review with the client, and they have to sign it. ID case management doesn't have that problem. They just do them every 4 months, every 2 months, they're just like clockwork. So the date that and you can do it by phone, they don't have to be in person. So the date that you meet with the client to review the ISP, that is the end date of that review period. And that's the date that you're going to use of the date of the service. And that's the date you want to schedule it on your calendar. So if my summary review end date is today, but let's say I did the review yesterday, I schedule it on the 10th. I date my service for the 10th, and in my service, there's a question of the start date of the review period and the end date of the review period. That end date of the review period is the 10th. The report is going to now calculate 90 days from the 10th.
Okay.
90 days from the 10th. Now, let's say you do it late. So it's due today, but I do it tomorrow on the 12th. I called the client on the 12th and I reviewed the ISP on the 12th. We're out of compliance. It's a day out of compliance, but you're out of compliance. I'm still going to date my service for the 12th. I'm going to schedule it on my calendar for the 12th. And the end date of my review period in the form is going to be the 12th. And I'm going to start counting 90 days from the 12th. Kind of went through those regulations several months ago when some issues came up at SCIP. And we're like, let's get a handle on this 90-day thing, better handle. We don't see anywhere that you have to do 90 days from the date it was due, like we have to do for face-to-face visits and case management. It just says it's just every 90 days from the date you did it. So you're out of compliance for a day. The next one is due 90 days from the 12th. Does that help?
Yeah.
And that's the report. It's confusing. The report, your BI reports pull from the date of the service. So be sure that you're putting the date of the service as the date you met with the client to review the ISP.
Okay, so I think that's where a lot of the confusion does come
And
in.
you guys also have that 30-day.
Yes. Yeah.
You have a 30-day review as well.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and fill this out. Any other questions while we're filling this one out? Do this for a year. Please, this active checkbox. I know we just put this in there last month, the active checkbox. It's brand new. Don't forget it. Still some people calling me, my plane will pull in. Everything's right. You didn't check the active checkbox. Yeah. So please be sure you're doing that. Remember, we do have the libraries, which we're not going over today, but those of you who know how to use them, we can put that in another training session. We're going to add our problems. And again, always talk to your supervisor if you aren't sure what your problem goals, objectives, interventions should be looking like. Or where to find some of this stuff. I know Amy did a training not too long ago. And she was, I believe in that training, showing folks how to use the DLA to develop the PGOIs for those of you who do the DLA. And also information comes out of your assessments for everybody. Objective. Oop. That's not an objective, that's a goal. There we go, objective. And an intervention. So remember, you have to have at least one problem. For every problem, at least one goal. For every goal, at least one objective, and at least one intervention. And who's responsible. We talked a little bit about, remembering your frequency the last time. Whatever frequency you put here, Dennis and licensing narrows in on that. He says, you said you were going to talk about this weekly. I need to see something. So be sure, whatever frequency of review that you're reviewing it, whether it's in an ISP summary review, quarterly review, or a progress note or something, it's got to be somewhere because he's looking for it. We're going to say quarterly, and then the modality. We talked a little bit about the modality the last time. If you aren't sure what modality, please talk to your supervisor. Darlene was on our session the last time, and the modality was causing some issues and some audits. So be sure that you're selecting the appropriate modality for what you're doing. And if you want, so we decided that if you're using multiple modalities, you can also include that in the description, if to add additional modalities. And if you want to add additional goals to the problem, say we want more than just one goal, we have 2 goals to go with this problem. We click in the colored area here in the problem statement, we always turn it yellow, and then click up here, goal, and now it gives me a new goal. Once I do that, I have to add an objective. So the goal is yellow, I can click objective, and I can also add an intervention for that objective. I haven't put in any end dates, so I better do that, or I could have some problems down the line if I don't. Myself is responsible, and whoever's responsible doesn't necessarily have to be you. It's whoever's responsible. We need to be able to report on that. I'm going to add in my end dates. I'm going to stick with my year end date. Oh. Let's see. You see how it filters all the way down. Took them all the way to everything that's related to that problem. So I could add another problem if I wanted to, and I can keep on going. If I decide I don't need something, I can click the red X and I get rid of it. So I like to remind people, we only click this red X while we're building the TX Plus initially. Once it's in here and the ISP gets signed, we never, ever, ever hit the red X's. We always end date things we no longer need, even if it's something that was put in by error. We'll go and you can fix it in an ISP summary review. Like you get into a month and you're like, oh boy, I did not mean to include that. Or we don't red X it. We'll do an ISP summary review and we'll just end date it. And we can even put a little update in the description or whatever if you needed to. And we'll talk more about that when we do get to cover the ISP summary review. Any questions so far? So we'll click the save button. Got an issue here. Pull it in. Might has a TX Plus for this program. Let's find out what happened there. Really didn't plan on this happening. MH outpatient 5/11/2022. Check the view close. 5/10. Well, it didn't save it either. Ooh, what's this? Well, can't see this. Okay. This worked perfectly. Let's see. This was the one I just did. I'm going to delete it. You close. This is the one I just ended. Let's make sure everything is in here. Okay. 5/10/2022. Active. Yes. Start date 5/11. Let's make sure I'm on the right scheduled date before I go any further. 5/11. Add to this. Okay. Well, I don't know what just happened. As many times as I've been practicing this, it works like a charm. Okay. I have to see the ticket. Let's see if I can. I'm just going to quickly do. I'm going to kind of cheat my way through it, so don't do what I do. I won't get people through it. I'm going to put in my end dates. The 23rd. Everything. active. November 2022, MH outpatient. Next one in the right program. Let's see. I don't know what's going on. Well, it does work. TX Plus, I'm not sure what's going on. Oops. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of research to figure out what I did wrong here. But like I said, often as I have practiced this up to today, it has worked. So I'm gonna do some research. I'm gonna figure this one out. And then next time we are gonna talk about the summary review, but we'll come back and touch base to this, and I'll give you my resolution as to what we found out. I know it does work. I've done it many, many times. Something's just not right. It keeps showing me this unactive checkbox, which everything is active. It could have some sort of weird little setting that I need to fix. Close. So I'm sorry about that. But any other questions though? But I will give you a resolution when we come back next month.
Under what conditions will we click on that new treatment plus button as opposed to opening up another service?
So Incredible, you can start you can start the TX Plus on the nav bar and then come create a service and connect the two together using the TX Plus category. Okay, let's go ahead and delete it. It's easier to get rid of it again. So in that case, I'm going to delete this whole service. Okay, so in that case, I can go to my client's tab, the client's profile. I can click the TX Plus, and when I'm going to add a new TX Plus this way, I would click the new TX Plus. So here you're building it on the nav bar versus in the service itself. So it's the same thing as the Add TX Plus link that you see in your service. And then I can build it from here. Once I do that, I then go to my schedule. I schedule my appointment, my service. Add TX Plus. And this was MH outpatient. Let's see, individual service plan. Oh, we got so many services. Service plan, my location. Let's see, this is 511, so I would begin the service. And then I've got it built over there with the start date of 511. I would not see this Add TX Plus link here, but I could click the TX Plus category here and it pulls it in. Of course, if I click it now, I get this because I don't have anything over there. Now I could do an Add TX Plus here. I get this link and I can start again. I'm going to assume I'm going to have the same error as before. So I want to research what happened to that. Could have just been a service. That's a good question though. Any other questions?
I have a question. It's not related to TX Plus, but it's, with the SMBF community, we end up dealing with a lot of transportation and things with peer support specialists that we're not actually getting paid for. But we want to put it on our schedule. We want to reflect that, we've been doing something. And my understanding is there's like a veteran dummy client or something we can use for that purpose.
Yes, there is. That's in the live domain. Shannon, do you remember the name of that client? Was it a vet here?
I thought it was like vet client, but let me look in the live domain. Well, I can't look in the live domain.
You don't have to answer it now. You can shoot me an email or a text.
Okay, because I'm recording, it won't let me minimize my screen. But I
That's
can
fine.
definitely look the client name up and ID and send it to you in an email when we're done.
Great.
So, yeah,
Sure
so,
appreciate it.
and so in those
No problem.
situations where we have those dummy clients, we only use them when there is not a client in Credible. So if the client is already in Credible, we would want to be documenting in that client's charge.
Okay.
So the dummy clients are usually used for, we have case managers who go to the FAPT meetings so they can document against that dummy client because those aren't necessarily their clients. I think the BHUC uses it because they have people who come in and then they don't stay, so they don't actually get a whole chart open. But there's like referrals or things that they do. I think the same with at the REACH program, they have informational only calls that come in, so they aren't clients of ours. So they document against their REACH client. But yes, if they end up having to do that transportation or things like that for people that aren't in Credible, then yeah, we can use that dummy
Okay.
client to document their time. And also for the peers, just everyone's aware of, the peers do have their own service types that they should be using. We do report peer services in very specific ways to the state. We report their credentials. We have actually 4 kinds of peer credentials. So we report their credentials, and then we also report their services that they do. So they have very, very specific, their MH peer support, SA peer support individual, there's ones for group, and then in PACT, you also have a third service there that the PACT folks use. So if you're
Okay.
working with peers, supervising peers, be sure they're using their peer services.
Okay.
That's a good question. Thank you. Any other questions? I'm sorry you didn't get to see this ISP work because it works and it's really sweet. But we'll get it next time. I'm going to figure out what I did wrong.
Mitzi,
Yes.
I know this is being recorded. Hooray, hooray.
Yay.
And it's going to be put in the cloud, correct?
Yeah, so we do put everything up on the, I can actually show you.
Yes, I was going to ask you to do that. Thank
So
you.
if you go to our SharePoint site, our Coffee with Credibles is actually in the information systems link here. They're all right here. So when you click on that information systems link, you would see them here down the side. That's where we've been putting them all. This is, yep. I don't think we didn't record the one in January, right, Shannon? So we do have the others that we have done though.
Correct. We didn't do the one in January.
Yeah, we have the other 3. I did forget to actually record the last month's, and I went back in and redid it. So you all could have it. This was the TX Plus Part 1. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions?
Good deal. Very, very good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.